Hello, good morning to you, or good afternoon, depending on what time of day it is that you're seeing me doing this recording. I'm trying to adjust everything. My name is June Edwards. I am in charge of the senior topics discussion for today, and this is for the first week of February. Hard to believe we're in 2021, but that's what's happening. Let's talk about the calendar events. This is one very busy week. If you look at the calendar events, February 1st, National Freedom Day. I wasn't sure exactly what that was until I started doing research on it, but I'll let you know. It's also when the Royal Canadian Mounted Police officially came into existence in Canada in 1920. It's Robinson Crusoe Day. Remember that famous story? And the first meeting of the U.S. Supreme Court was held on this day in 1790. Let's go on to February 2nd, Groundhog Day. Remember the movie with Bill Murray? We watch that every single year, and we'll probably do that this year too. Also in 1892, on February 2nd, the bottle cap was patented. I'm looking around to see if I have any bottles here, but I don't. Okay, February 3rd, the first female doctor, Elizabeth Blackwell, was born in 1821. Now, I really don't think she's the first female doctor. She's probably the first recorded female doctor in our country. The Vietnam War ended in 1975 on February 3rd, and that was about almost 50 years ago. Not Thursday, but February 4th. Facebook, if you can believe this or not, all the hullabaloo about whether Facebook has a monopoly and is too powerful or not, along with the other tech media. Well, Facebook was first launched in 2004. It's only been around for 17 years. And now look at it's an international commodity. In 1902, Charles Lindbergh, who was a famous airplane pioneer, he was born. Rosa Parks, and we talked about her last week and how she didn't want to give up her seat on the bus. And that led to the boycotts in Atlanta. And that's what put Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. on the map. Well, Rosa Parks was born in 1913 on February 4th. February 5th is Weatherman's Day. And I had to look that one up too. I wasn't sure what that was all about. For some reason, they've also decided February 5 is Disaster Day. I don't know which disaster they're referring to, but the COVID-19 quarantine is an ongoing disaster, and it's lasted a lot more than one day. Also, Hank Aaron, the country singer, was born in 1934. February 6th, another famous person born, Babe Ruth, baseball great, in 1895. And the Monopoly board game went on sale in stores in 1935. But I found out some really fascinating facts about Monopoly, and I'll tell you those in a few minutes. The last date that we're covering this week is February 7th, Charles Dickens' birthday from 1812. Laura Ingalls Wilder, who wrote the Pioneer Girl books, she was born in 1867. And because it's going to be the first Sunday in February, it is going to be Super Bowl number 55. You know how you write that in Roman numerals? An L and a V. So that's how you write that. It looks backwards when I show it to you on my screen, but I do know how to make an L and a V. It's just the camera's picking things up opposites, I guess. So let's get started, shall we? So the first one I want to look at is Freedom Day. Well, at the end of the American Civil War, President Abraham Lincoln issued an Emancipation Proclamation on January 1st, 1863, declaring that the slaves in the Confederate controlled areas were now going to be free. Congress adopted the 13th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, abolishing slavery and involuntary servitude, except if you were being punished in jail for a crime. So February 1, 1865, became National Freedom Day for our country when the Senate, the House of Representatives, and the President passed the amendment. And Black people seated up in the Capitol balconies, they'd only been allowed in 1 year before, loudly cheered that there was a new day coming. So I have an article that comes from the National Archives, written by John Hope Franklin in 1993. And it actually includes within it the journal from President Abraham Lincoln. So we get to hear exactly what happened on the day that he signed the Emancipation Proclamation. Are you ready for this? It's pretty neat. He's one of my heroes. Thursday, January 1, 1863, was a bright, crisp day in the nation's capital, kind of like today. The previous day had been a strenuous one for President Lincoln, but New Year's Day was to be even more strenuous. So he rose early. There was much to do, not the least of which was to put the finishing touches on the Emancipation Proclamation. And they had to really twist some arms to get some people to sign it that didn't want to sign it. In fact, from what I understand, a few of them got tarred and feathered and threatened to be beat up. And then they signed it. At 10:45, the document was brought to the White House by the Secretary of State, William Seward. The president signed it, but he noticed an error in it. It read, "In testimony whereof I have hereunto set my name and caused the seal of the United States to be affixed." The president had never used that form in proclamations. He always preferred to say, "In testimony whereof I have hereunto set my hand." So he asked the secretary to make the correction, and then the formal signing would be made on the corrected copy. The traditional New Year's Day reception at the White House began that morning at 11 o'clock. Members of the cabinet and the diplomatic corps were among the first to arrive. Officers of the Army and the Navy arrived together 11:30. The public was admitted at noon, and then Secretary Seward and his son Frederick, the Assistant Secretary of State, returned with a corrected draft. The rigid laws of etiquette held the president to his duty for 3 hours. Had necessity required it, he could, of course, have left such mere social occupation at any moment, they pointed out, but the president saw no occasion to leave. On the other hand, he probably deemed it wise that the completion of this momentous executive act should be attended by every circumstance of deliberation. After the guests finally departed, the president went upstairs to his study for the signing in the presence of a few friends. No cabinet meeting was called, and no attempt was made to have a ceremony. Later, Lincoln told F.B. Carpenter, the artist, that as he took up the pen to sign the paper, his hand shook so violently that he could not write. He said, "I could not for a moment control my arm. I paused and a superstitious feeling came over me, which made me hesitate. In a moment, I remembered that I had been shaking hands for hours with several hundred people, and hence that was a very simple explanation of the trembling and shaking of my arm. With a hearty laugh at his own thoughts, the president proceeded to sign the Emancipation Proclamation. Just before he put his name to the document, he said, "I never in my life felt more certain that I was doing right than I do in signing this paper." And today we remember that on Freedom Day, which is the 1st of February. And in some cities and states, they do a reenactment of it, and they have people that they have parades and all kinds of things. But because of COVID, I don't really think there's much going on this year at all. Okay, so now we're going to move to a little bit lighter subject, and that is Groundhog Day. And Groundhog Day was always one of my husband's all-time favorites. He loved the movie with the comedian Bill Murray as the lead character. Now, the character was destined to relive the day over and over again for years and years until he transformed into a more decent human being. Well, I understand about that. That movie came out in 1993. It was a big deal. But what's the big deal, anyways, about Groundhog Day? This midwinter celebration in the United States and in Canada happens on February 2. If a groundhog in Punxsutawney, now try saying that 5 times fast, Punxsutawney, Punxsutawney, Punxsutawney. I'm going to get my tongue twisted. I just know it. Pennsylvania comes out of its hole on this day, and if it sees its shadow, it gets scared and runs back into its burrow, predicting 6 more weeks of winter weather. Now, the Germans started this over in Europe with hedgehogs, and then they switched to groundhogs once they moved to the United States. And that's what it's been since. Now, a newspaper editor, excuse me, who belonged to the Punxsutawney Groundhog Club, and he was a hunter of groundhogs, declared that Phil, the first Punxsutawney groundhog, was America's only true weather forecasting groundhog. There have been 11 groundhogs since Phil, but the Punxsutawney residents have always sworn that the original Phil was immortal. The Punxsutawney Groundhog Club puts on a 3-day celebration, and tens of thousands of visitors flood the area to come and witness Phil's prediction. The club members dress in top hats and old-fashioned top coats if they can, and the inner circle dignitaries speak in the Pennsylvania Dutch dialect, which they supposedly say they're speaking in groundhogese, to communicate with Phil, the groundhog. Unfortunately, Phil, the Punxsutawney groundhog, has only been accurate about whether winter went on another 6 weeks or not, about 40% of the time. An imposter, Staten Island Chuck, another groundhog, has been right about 70% of the time. So Phil's got some real competition there. Now, what about the facts and fantasies about groundhogs? Groundhogs are also known as woodchucks. That's where the Long Island, the Staten Island Chuck got his name. They belong to a group of rather large ground squirrels, and they can live for up to 10 years in captivity. They hibernate in the late fall and naturally wake up by late March. Punxsutawney, according to legend, that groundhog is more than 125 years old. And the residents swear that it is due to the magical punch he drinks every summer. I'd like to know what is in that magical punch. Wouldn't you? I mean, to live to be 125 and be as vigorous and in such good shape as that groundhog, and he's a fat little guy too. All right, moving on to the next story, the history of Monopoly. Now, Monopoly Day is celebrated on February 5th, but the board game started, the earliest known version was called the Landlord's Game. It was designed by an American, Elizabeth Magee, and first patented in 1904, but they think she was playing it as early as 1902. She intended the Landlord's Game to illustrate the economic consequences of Ricardo's law of economic rent. And what she was trying to prove is that the landlords get richer through the years and the renters end up poorer. A series of board games was developed from 1906 through the 1930s that involved the buying and selling of land and developing that land. You know how you put the little houses and the little hotels on the property once you buy it, and you have to pay the taxes each year. So by 1933, a board game had been created much like our modern day version of Monopoly, which is sold by Parker Brothers and its related companies. And there were several people that combined in the evolution and design changes. By the 1970s, the idea that the game had been created only by Charles Darrow was a popular rumor. It was printed in the game's instructions for many years. But even in Reader's Digest in 2003, they gave him credit, although he did finally confess that he copied it from his friend's original game. Well, you know, there were other people like Professor Ralph Anspach, who published a game that wanted to illustrate the principles of monopolies and trust busting. He fought against Parker Brothers and his parent company, General Mills, over the copyright and the trademarks of the game. They did research and found out and rediscovered the earlier versions of the game. At the end of the court case, the game's logo and graphic design elements became part of a larger Monopoly brand, and it was licensed by Parker Brothers, and they own it to this day. And they have never acknowledged any of the game's history before Charles Darrow on its official Monopoly website, which is really a shame because somebody else had actually invented the game. They started international Monopoly tournaments in the early 1970s. And there's been a whole set of spin-off games in the United States and in London, published by Hasbro or its licensees. They've changed the color scheme and they've done other things, although the United States standard still maintains the Atlantic City street names and property names. Hasbro also modified the official logo of Mr. Monopoly. Now, I want to show you what I have a game. I found the original game we bought. I'll show this to you here. This is the original design of it, and you can see the outside of the box. And you can see the logo of Mr. Monopoly. This is from the early 1980s when the kids were little. And later, in the 1990s, we got one called the Clintonopoly that used things from the White House and from Clinton's presidency. But here's what the board looks like from the original game. You can see the railroad and the water company, and you can see cards, and there's the jailhouse. And where is the jail? We got to see that. Go to jail, he says, right there. And then you have to go to jail, and you have to have a certain amount of money to get back out. And I have another board in here, I think. Well, I was hoping I had the Clinton board, but I don't. We must have gotten rid of it. That was, 25 years ago. Anyway, we have the cards, community chess, and then we have the chance cards. And this one is pretty cheap. You can buy things for not that much money. I know in more recent editions, you have to pay a higher amount of money, like for the boardwalk and all of that. Although the landlord's game had been patented back in the 1900s early, and some handmade boards were made, it was not actually manufactured and published till 1906. Maggie and two other people established the Economic Game Company of New York. And Maggie submitted an edition to Parker Brothers around 1910, which George Parker said he did not want to publish. It was published in 1913 under the name Brer Fox and Brer Rabbit. So then a professor at the School of Commerce at the University of Pennsylvania began using the game as a teaching tool in economics. His students made their own boards and taught the game to others. Then he moved over to the University of Toledo. And then another friend of his took the game to Columbia University. It was spreading quickly by word of mouth, and it was played by all kinds of people who were aware of it. So by 1906, Maggie had moved to Illinois and married Albert W. Phillips in 1910. Then she went to the Washington, D.C. area in 1923. She repatented a revised version of the landlord's game in 1924. It included street names, and she wanted to regain control over all the different handmade games that were out there. For her 1924 edition, a couple of the streets on the board were named after Chicago streets, notably the Loop and Lakeshore Drive. And this revision included a special monopoly rule and card that allowed higher rents to be charged when you owned all three railroads or all the utilities. So there were other people using the game. There was a fraternity of brothers that were teaching it at Williams College around 1926. The Thun brothers wanted to sell it commercially, but an attorney told them that they could not do it because they were not its inventors. So there were people trying to get around with it, but how did it end up with the Parker brothers? Hoskins had made a new board and taught it to a group of local Quakers, and they reinstated the original rule of buying properties at their listed price rather than auctioning them, because Quakers did not believe in auctions. So then other people were looking at it. The version that Esther Darrell, the wife of Charles Darrell, learned was the Atlantic City one. Then Darrell began to distribute the game himself as Monopoly, and he never spoke to the Todds again. He basically stole it from them. He initially made the sets of the Monopoly game by hand with the help of his first son, and he drew the designs, and then his son and his wife helped fill in the spaces with colors. They made the title deed cards and the chance cards and the community chess cards. And then he contacted a printing company, And then he did get a copyright on his version of the game in 1933. And although proof of its registration, there's still a few questions about it. He first took the game to Milton Bradley and attempted to sell it as his personal invention. They rejected it. Then Darrow sent the game to Parker Brothers in 1934. They rejected it and said it's too complicated, too technical, and it takes too long to play. Well, I can remember some marathon 2, 3, 4 day games during the summertime when I was a kid that we would play it. In early 1935, the company heard about the game's excellent sales during the Christmas season in Philadelphia in 1934. So they contacted Darrow and scheduled a new meeting. They bought Darrow's game. They helped him take a patent on it. They did learn in April of 35, Darrow was not the sole inventor of the game. And but they got him to sign some affidavits and bolster his claims to it. Then they bought out Maggie's 1924 patent and the copyrights of other people, and they became the undisputed owners of it. And it was really popular during the Depression, made people feel like they had a chance at owning something, even if only in a game. I'm going to show you this picture here. This is a picture of the way it was designed. And here is one of the original boards. Take a look at that. And then later, there were postcard replicas of a 1936 poster introducing the game Monopoly to the United Kingdom. And this was through Parker Brothers. And here you can see editions from 7 different countries. This is the editions from 7 different countries. And this is the new game of Monopoly that Parker Brothers put out in the 30s. And of course, there's been updates for many, many years, and it's been marketed and sold all over the place. And so I hope you enjoy hearing that history. It just goes to show whoever has a good idea, you better get a patent on it right away, because there's other people, once they hear it's making money, they're going to want to go for it. So I'm glad that Maggie did get some money from Parker Brothers once Mr. Darrow admitted that it was not just his game alone, although he did add improvements to it. Okay, well, moving on from that. History of football. Well, people have been kicking a ball around for thousands of years, but the modern day version of football began in 1863 in England when rugby football and association football branched off and went different ways. Okay, it does get traced way, way, way back, but people have enjoyed kicking a ball around for thousands of years. And you know, the art of controlling the ball with just your feet is not such an easy skill. The very earliest form of the game, for which there is scientific evidence, was an exercise from a military manual from China from 200 or 300 BC. The Han Dynasty forebear of football was called Su Chu, and it consisted of kicking a leather ball filled with feathers and hair through an opening into a small net fixed onto long bamboo canes. And you could not use your hands at all. There was another version of the game from Japan called Kemari, which began 500 or 600 years later and is still played today, where the players all stand in a circle and pass the ball to each other in a relatively small space, and they do not let it touch the ground. There was a Greek version and there was a Roman version. We know it was very, very lively, We know the game was popular with those civilizations for 700 to 800 years, but the use of feet was not a big part of that game. And of course, in the 1860s, it became more like what we have today. And today, the final teams from the two major leagues have a playoff on Super Bowl, which is this Sunday, and that will be Sunday, February 7th. So it's going to be the Kansas City Chiefs, who were the winners last year, and they're going to be defending their title against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And this will be the first time ever in 55 years of Super Bowls that it's going to be, the team is going to play and also host at their own stadium. So we'll see how that works out. Now, the AFC and the NFC are tied. They each have 27 Super Bowl victories. The Steelers and the Patriots have each had 6 wins. The 49ers and Cowboys have each had 5 wins. So there's going to be a halftime show this year put on by a Canadian group called The Weeknd. And I don't know a thing about them. The Super Bowl was going to be here in Los Angeles, but because of the severity of the COVID-19 outbreak, the league moved it to Tampa Bay, Florida, and we are supposed to host the game next year in 2022. Believe it or not, there are a few seats. There are a few seats which cost thousands of dollars to get, and they're probably already spoken for, mostly by big corporate people. At the first Super Bowl back in the 1960s, the ticket was like $65 each, which was expensive for that time. But of course, it has gotten worse. And how about the weather? Well, some years the weather has been icy and snow. One bowl was played during an ice storm. That was 2000. The warmest high temperature of 82 degrees was in 1973 and 2003. The coldest high temperature for a dome game was 16 degrees in 1982. The coldest high temperature for a game played outside, 43 degrees in 1972. And the wettest Super Bowl with an inch of rain was in 2007. So we'll see how the weather is. Tampa Bay, usually not too bad. How about some unusual facts about the Super Bowl? In 2006, the cost of a 30-second commercial was $2.5 million. So count to 30, and you would have had to pay $2.5 million to have a commercial during the time you counted. Well, it's even more money now. I did want to show you something about the uniforms and how they've changed. My father played football back in the 1940s, and he had a sweatshirt and a pair of rugged pants and shoes with some kind of cleats, but he had a leather helmet. And I thought, a leather helmet? And I don't think he had a nose guard or a chin guard or anything like that. So I wanted to look at that, and I wanted to show you what the costumes look like. I have all this information on the Super Bowl, but you're going to have to watch it on Sunday. Football uniforms through history. Well, here's what it looks like today. They have a special, it's not even plastic, it's a special material in the helmet. They have a plastic visor over the entire face. They have a face guard, and they have this chin guard. And then they have all kinds of padding, which makes them look a lot bigger than they really are on the uniform. But long before helmets, shoulder pads, mouth guards, and cleats became the standard, they looked like they were going out for a day on the sea. This is the Yale University football team in the very late 1890s. Look at that. How do they look? Actual photograph. Look like they're ready to play a game. Given that the football was a contact sport from the very beginning, uniforms were made for durability out of heavier materials like wool. They were not into colors. Mostly they wore brown, black, gray. That's pretty much it. Maybe navy blue. During the earliest days of the sports, helmets were not required or even a common part. The first helmets were made of soft leather. They helped cushion hits, but they did not offer much reduction in injury. There you can see the guys have different kinds of, look at the raccoon skin, the fur coat worn by the coach. Oh, that's what they look like. Hard leather helmets eventually replaced the soft ones in the 1930s. This is the New York Giants. Maybe you had a relative that played football back about that time. Still not a lot of protection, though. In the late 1930s, the plastic helmet afforded more protection, but they were not universally adopted, and there was a fault in the plastic mix and helmet production in the 1948 season. Helmets would shatter upon collision, so then they banned them. Whoa, that's just right after the time my father played. You certainly don't want your helmet to shatter. Think about the brain injuries for that. And here's another one where they tried an experiment with a leather helmet from a New York Giants player for the whole face. But it got in the way and it was hot and sweaty, and they got rid of it. Then plastic head protection was banned and they started putting team emblems on it. Here's the LA Rams halfback in 1951. And he started putting the wings up there on his helmet. In the 1950s, plastic helmets were reintroduced. After the manufacturing process had been refined, it took them 3 years to produce more reliable gear. And they also put padding right next to the head, inside the helmet. 1956, the Cleveland Browns added a radio receiver inside it, and people weren't sure if they were going to allow that, but they eventually did. The 1960s saw the teams using more color. Here's the San Diego Chargers in a powder blue. And this is a retro uniform. Sometimes they wear them for 1 or 2 of their games to show what the original color was. But you can notice on top, they still have all the modern day protections. The 60s saw the development of eye-catching uniforms. The 70s and 80s brought some of the greatest eyesores. Here's an orange atrocity from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I wonder if they're going to wear that color for the Super Bowl, because I don't think they've been in the Super Bowl for a while. During the 80s and 90s, plastic helmets were replaced with polycarbonate head protection and plastic visors for the first time as eye protection. But they still do like to wear those throwback jerseys on occasion. So it'll be interesting to see what they have. And I'm sorry we went over a little. I didn't know I was going to be able to find all this stuff on the Super Bowl, but I should have known. So I will see you next week, same time, same place here in my family room. And I wish you a very pleasant afternoon and the rest of the day and the rest of the week. And remember, that second vaccine will be soon. Bye-bye, everybody. Stay safe, stay healthy.